Guys, welcome back to another episode of Wisdom and Wealth. I'm excited to have Jeremy Denson with me, co-founder of Bison Coolers, legit, and just a really cool. I was actually, before I even started my business, this is how we met. I was selling, great learning experience for me, but we met in that time. This was years ago.
Yeah, it's probably 6-7 years ago at least.
No, it was longer than that. This is before. This might be 8 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds right.
When I was right at the end of that time. And so anyways, his really cool concept, and has just seen some, as of recently, been on a Super Bowl commercial, which was the coolest thing in the world to see. And so I'm super stoked to hear his story, and I know you guys will be too. But Jeremy, thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. Oh, this is good. Okay. Jump into it. If you wouldn't mind, give us a recap of like, what the heck, how did Bison come around?
Man, I really stumbled into this.
Okay.
I come from family entrepreneurs. My aunts, uncles, parents, grandparents, everyone has always owned businesses like growing up. And so I've always had a passion for entrepreneurship, and I would do little side hustles here and there. And then in early 2011, my wife was a school teacher. She got pregnant, and we were expecting our first kid, and she really wanted to stay home. So I was like, I need a side hustle to offset that lost income from her teacher salary versus what childcare would cost. So I started doing market research and identifying industries that I thought might be, just something that she could run from home. And the original goal was to sell 1 cooler a day. And so we started this business, and
I remember those simple goals. Those are the best.
But like, and they say like that first million is the most difficult, you know? And we happened to time the market perfectly. There was that company down in Austin, but they were still really small at the time. And we just jumped into an industry that exploded. So we were very fortunate. But it obviously a lot of learnings from that, where you're expecting to build a really small side hustle, and then you get all your inventory, and then it's gone in 2 weeks. And it's like, okay, 3 months later, we'll get more. And then it's gone in 2 weeks. And so it was just like this process to where that initial success actually came easy. What's been the harder challenge is, how do you scale this business beyond that? And so it's been a wild ride, but this July will be 14 years. And the fact that we've been able to build something that can sustain 14 years, and we've had competitors come in and close up shop, and it's been a wild ride, but I've loved every moment of it. The highs, the lows. It's been a learning experience for us.
Well, so real quick, you said those people. So is that like a Voldemort, like the name, we shall not name them?
Yeah. that company down in
that
Austin.
Company.
Brand Y.
Brand Y.
I don't want to poke the bear. They got a few $1 billion more than I do these days, so.
That's okay. Well, so that you came into this, and I'll tell you what, immediately what I noticed, which is kind of funny. I've heard this story a bunch, where we got pregnant or we had a baby, where like your family grew, and that was a catalyst for something else. And that Shaler's one of our advisors on, same thing for him, where he was a student pastor for 13 years. And he was like, I was teaching other people's kids, and I was having my own. I'm leaving my kid to go teach other people's kids or raise them essentially, or help. And he goes, it didn't sit well with me, but I feel that where there was like some sort of change that it pushed you in a different direction. And so, okay, that's crazy. But how did now, so you got into this thing, and you started moving inventory. Did you just start like at the day one? I know you're probably scraping through this, but if you were to go back day one, it was like, hey, I posted a site and I just made a cooler, or I ordered this from a sourcing company?
I sourced a product from overseas as kind of a proof of concept. I paid a company, I want to say it was $2,000 to build me a website, design me a logo, and I got like 3 months of marketing out of that. And so really small scale. And I partnered with my father on it. And I was like, Dad, I just need you to manage the books, ship out some product, give me a little bit of money, and I'll handle everything else. And then he ended up working full time for 12 years in his second career. But yeah, I mean, you start off small. I love doing proof of concepts. I feel like, why commit to something until you can prove it out?
Right.
And so for us, just importing from overseas in 2011, proved that there was some demand for this, that this idea actually had legs. And so in 2012, we brought production here to the US, and that's where we made our investment, like designed our product from scratch, invested in all the tooling, sourced to manufacturing here domestically. And so, that's just how I'm comfortable, like building out a business is starting small. And then, okay, now that I have a little bit of confidence, now I'm willing to make that initial investment.
Right. Well, shoot, you say comfort. It's just smart. We've had, and I don't know about you, like we're in the Bible Belt, right? And so as much as I'm a faith-based guy, but like as much as I love our church and who we go to, I guess I was like part of my, good that came from me not being raised hardcore in the Bible Belt is like this over spiritualized thing. And this is where I feel like some people can be, is even if you're not faith-based, but like you can be this dreamy place where I'm like, I got this passion, and you never go test it. And so you like unload a ton of money or time or effort into this thing that was never proven to begin with.
Right.
And so like how important is beta testing your products, which you just walked in with a cup that you guys don't even have on the line, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's
yeah, I mean, and we've always kind of lived that model of let's beta test, let's put some products out there and see if there's demand. If you look at the majority of our product line, it always starts with a small investment. Like the dry bag line, it's like, okay, let's just introduce a dry bag and see how it does. Okay, it did well. Let's introduce a bigger one. Now let's do a backpack version. But being able to do those proof of concepts and really have some confidence that the products you're putting out that people are going to eat up and they're going to demand. To me, that's just kind of in our DNA and has been since we started, 14 years ago.
Good. Well, I like hearing that because so tell me this, what was your first big wrench or cog in the wheel that you had, that you came up, you're like, this is a big problem, or maybe you didn't even realize it was a problem that you had to fix eventually?
I mean, that was an easy one. The original company was called Brute Outdoors.
Okay.
And we had an approved trademark for the name Brute. And so it was Brute Outdoors. It was Brute by itself. And, we just felt like we'd built this business around it. We had great organic traffic to the website. We had a name in the industry. And then I woke up one morning and I get these, daily Google notifications of where our company name was mentioned on the internet. And I saw this and it was like, blah, blah, blah versus Brute Outdoors LLC. And I was like, what is this? I click on it. And so the way I found out that I was getting sued for our company name was a Google notification on my phone at 6 a.m. laying in bed. And I was like, what is this? And it was a multi-billion-dollar company that had, they make a trash can called a Brute. And they have a white version of this that they use at restaurants to take ice from an ice maker to an ice dispenser. And they're like, technically we're both in the ice container space. And so they were actually good to work with. And we had to rebrand the entire company. But I had made a mistake of putting Brute Outdoors on the inside of all of our lid molds for our hard coolers. So all in, it cost me about $500,000 to go back in to rebrand, the legal fees. And this is after having an approved trademark, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I learned, like, with small business and business in general, you're always going to have headwinds. You're going to have the unexpected that just pop up, and you've got to find a way to fight through. Who would have guessed that having an approved trademark would eventually lead to a lawsuit that cost us $500,000? But I could go allocate hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and fight it and probably be okay and withstand that. But that's money I'm never getting back in the future. Yeah. I'd rather I accept it, establish the terms of engagement and how we can clear out the existing inventory, and then rebrand the company. And we basically had to start over. So we retired our old domain, which was the worst part. When you spent 5 years building goodwill and all the search engines and the online forums and social media, and then to have to go rebrand and start over again, there's no telling how many millions in sales that cost us over that period of time.
Well, that's funny because I'm going through the trademark process right now for my company, and that the story that really spurred that, you get those spam emails, right? But the story that really got me going on that was a buddy of mine who has his own advisory firm, and he same thing. They had another company that was the same name. but they were fine with it. But apparently a new owner had come in and they weren't. And so they came down on them. Well, they had to rebrand, lost all that brand equity. And it cost them a whole bunch just to rebrand into something else. Same story.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do not want that because everybody loves their own brand. And talk about Austin Powers or something, but but it was like it's crazy to even hear that with a trademark that came down the pipe. And I would guess at least they were good to work with. But
yeah, and in hindsight, it was somewhat of a blessing in disguise. The one thing, if I could change, would be to be able to still own that domain and just do a redirect to bisoncoolers.com. But in hindsight, I would always introduce myself, and they're like, "What do you do?" And I'd say, I own Brewed Outdoors. We're an outdoor brand. They're like, "Okay, but what do you do?" The name wasn't very intuitive, so switching over from Brewed Outdoors to Bison Coolers, I think, in hindsight, was the smart move because it's more intuitive and people could remember that a little bit better. But every time I'd say Brewed Outdoors, they're like, "Can you spell that for me?" And so it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. But at the time, that was like the first big obstacle that we were faced with. And in hindsight, it wasn't as big of a challenge or obstacle. Like we've faced far harder than that since then. But at the time, I just remember being shell shocked, like $500,000 that I didn't have in the company that I'm having to draw on a line of credit and pay off. But it's a lesson learned.
Yeah.
And that's all the journey of business is basically one lesson after another and being able to overcome those. But now with the skill set that I've built in the past 14 years, I feel like I should be 3 times bigger and get there 3 times quicker than I am now. But you got to go through this. You got to take the punches to the face and really take a beating before you can really understand, how to make the right decisions at the right time and how to scale a business. But that's just the nature of it.
Right. No, that's big. Okay. So jump to a win now. Like when was a hockey stick type moment where all of a sudden you had a big upturn on something and you're like, come on, let's go, baby.
Oh yeah.
This is amazing.
I mean, we had a couple of accounts that kind of stumbled into our lap years ago, like a big, hardware company, not like to the size of Home Depot or Lowe's, but McCoy's Building Supply.
I know them.
And they've got like they're more focused on smaller towns. They're certainly in some big cities, but they stumbled into our lap, and then a couple other big accounts. And it was like, okay, at that point you're doubling your revenue, and that like presents a whole new problem in itself. But it was one of those things like when occasionally business comes easy, it's like the biggest blessing, and you're on like cloud 9 because you're like, wow, like that stumbled into my lap. We landed this big deal, immediate results, big purchase orders. And in hindsight, I'm like, man, those are the good old days where, business used to just fall in your lap from time to time. But in this economy, it's clearly that's not the case. You have to work for every sale and earn every dollar. So definitely a different environment now, but that was a huge win for us back there that gave us the capital to really invest in the company, invest into marketing and building brand equity with people and double down on it. So yeah, and in hindsight, that was one of my favorite moments when all of a sudden these huge 6-figure plus accounts came in, and you didn't have to work for it as much,
Well, so now I'm going to challenge you on that. Didn't have to work for it because there was something that went somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the prior 4 or 5 years of investing in the brand that led to that moment, but it didn't feel like that one massive obstacle, that one thing that we had to overcome. It was like all the hard work we had put in the 4 or 5 years paid off in that same year, and it just paid dividends for us.
What now was that like somebody in the company had saw your brand, used it personally, and wanted to bring it into the company, or what was the story and how you guys
and
got in there?
That's really what kickstarts a lot of these opportunities. And we do a lot of customization. That accounts for the bulk of our revenue of putting people's corporate logos on swag for special events like golf tournaments, trade shows, that type of stuff, but also customer appreciation, employee recognition. And so what I love about that aspect of our business is you never know whose hands that product's going to fall into, what doors it's going to open up for you. And, that the Google opportunity to be featured in North Texas in the Super Bowl commercial, like that came from the years of goodwill we had built up our brand, but then just putting product out there and people touching and feeling and being able to use it on a daily basis. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, this might be a good company, to feature. Let's dive into that. And they went to our website and combed through our social media. And it was like, again, all the years we'd put in and talked about the importance of branding and having a solid online presence. And then all of a sudden you get this major windfall. So great opportunity for us. But it's one of those things that, that one stumbled into our lap as well. And it felt like it came easy, but it was a culmination of years worth of hard work that led to that moment in time.
Yeah. Okay. Now talk about that a little bit, because and for anybody who hasn't been introduced to the brand yet, you need to go online and see the Super Bowl party viewing that they had and see the crowd there. And it was really cool. But, okay. Talk about that a little bit. So you did something totally different, that you were one of 50 that had a spotlight from Google, but you were the only company, or that you had told me this previous, right? You're the only company that did something to prepare for this.
Yeah, and that to me was the most surprising aspect of it. Is we were selected. It's 50 states, 50 stories, where they focus on a small business in each state. They sent out a film crew and they put together a 30-second spot that was featured in the Super Bowl. But it's a part of this national campaign that they're going to be pushing all year long. So it was one of those unique opportunities where someone came along and said, we're familiar with the brand. Do you have any interest in being featured in this commercial? The funniest part was I had marked the email read. I thought, our Google reps, they turn about every quarter, and they all want to go through the same process. It's like, no, we've been hard at it doing paid advertising for almost a decade now. So we don't need to go through that process. So I just marked the email read when I was at a trade show. And then a week later, I got an email and I was like, are you sure you don't want to be featured? And I scrolled down and I was like, how did I miss this? I was like, that would have been the biggest mistake I ever made. So went through that process with them and they narrowed us down. They're like, hey, you made the top 10, you made the top 5 for Texas. And then one weekend I looked at my inbox. I was like, hey, we chose you. And I was like, wait, you chose us as the one for Texas? And they were like, yeah, we need to send out a crew. And so they sent out a team of 8 people to come out and film this commercial. And that was my first time seeing that elite, Amazon, Apple, Google, what those big companies, how they produce those commercials. That was my first time being able to see that. And I was just blown away at the quality and how professional they were and put together. And I remember looking at the camera as they're filming this, and I'm looking at that and I'm like, man, that looks great. And I'm like, it looks better than in real life. And I'm just panning back and forth, but it was just a big surprise to get that opportunity. But that's what it takes to grind for 14 years. Is occasionally you're going to get some major tailwinds, but small business is headwinds and tailwinds, right? And it's how you handle the good times. You don't want to be, fat and happy and content with where things are, because I've been there before, where business came easy and I didn't have to work for it. And then you move into a tough economy and you got to grind and work for every single sale. It's 2 different things. So I think it really taught me that, that never get content, never get complacent with where you are, because you've always got to be constantly innovating, introducing new products and keeping your brand fresh. Otherwise, you just kind of fall to the wayside and people get tired and it's like, hey, what's new? And you're like, oh, nothing, same stuff as last year.
Really?
No one,
really?
Yeah, no one wants to engage with a brand like that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, talk about that. Talk about okay, at the beginning of the business, you're everything, right? But as you grow, how do you grow the business? We talk about this even in our master class, and I don't know if that's been a beneficial thing towards you, for you or not, but is as we grow, it's releasing. A big one I was just talking with somebody yesterday in Montana about was eMyth, right? That was something I got from one of my mentors, was really creating a business that is able to operate on its own, to allow you to go out and do the things that you should be doing, instead of getting bogged down by the things that is just wasting time and not actually bringing revenue or opportunity into the door. What's been a huge lesson for you in that process to allow you to continue to grow, so the company doesn't get capped?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. I think for me, the big turning point was getting out of the day-to-day business. For so many years, when you run a small business, we run lean. For the amount of product that we move, people are really surprised to hear you have 14 employees. That's it. And so we run a very lean operation. But I was so into the day-to-day where customers were sending me orders, I was inputting orders, that at the end of the day, I'd look back and I'd be like, oh, I spent, 8.5 hours like just being reactive and taking care of customers and processing orders. And I spent, 1 hour being proactive and establishing a strategy. So for me, I had to get out of the day to day. And when I did that, I found myself with a lot more free time at work, which that comes with its own like adjustment process to where it's like, I'm not used to having this much capacity, but it allowed me to focus on the strategy and executing that strategy. And so then I just started hiring people smarter than me. And it's not that hard to find people smarter than me. I'll be very transparent, but what I hired people that were smarter and more talented than me.
Yeah.
And I think at that point was where the business fundamentally changed. Is I've got a marketing guy that knows marketing 10 times better than I'll ever know it, knows it inside out. I got a finance guy. And so as you start to build these super teams of people that are really good at what they do, it really allowed us to scale the business and really take it to that next level. But it wasn't until I got out of the day-to-day and then hired the right people before we were really able to take that next step.
Go through that. So like your first one was offloading. Like we talk about hiring an admin as your first hire, right? Or processing orders or something like that, right? What's been like one of that's probably one, just releasing your time so you can have a creative mindset to see what's next potentially. But what's been one of the best hires that you've made that you've really seen a critical uptick, or maybe even just allowed you to have the right mind to have the next critical uptick in the movement?
I think there's two. The first hire we ever had, about a year into the business with my brother-in-law, Tyler, and having family involved. About half of our employees almost are family, but having family involved has been huge because they're just as vested in our success as I am. And so, but he's been there since day one. So I would say the one hire that really moved the needle was hiring Mike, who's our VP of marketing.
Okay.
He came from a competitor, which is now defunct as of a month ago or so. But a company that was far bigger than we are, that he had the playbook and had gone through this process before and knew how to build that consumer side of the business. And so hiring somebody like that just had this depth of knowledge that I never had. So I managed our marketing teams. We would hire, third parties to help build the brand and run the digital campaigns. But having that one person that they live and breathe and understand how marketing changes, because you could be a marketing ace right now, but 2 years from now, are you still going to be on top of your game when the environment changes? Having somebody that could dedicate that amount of energy and time into staying on top of it and progressing with the industry has paid huge dividends for us. And so, it was a blessing. He kind of stumbled into our lap, but it's been a blessing hiring somebody of that level of talent that I could offload instead of me putting on my marketing hat and like pretending I'm an expert and managing these, hiring somebody that's like, you know more than I'll ever know. Run with it. I'm going to hold you accountable for this.
Yeah.
And so it's been a match made in heaven. We're closing in on 3 years now. But that's just truly moved the needle. And it was funny because people would be like, I noticed something's different about your website and your social media, but like the quality of y'all's content has gotten a lot better. And I was like, oh yeah, that's because I'm not managing that anymore. I've hired somebody who lives and breathes that day in, day out. So, he's been a terrific hire for us.
So was that the biggest thing? Was it the type of quantity or quality or type of content, the quality of the content? What was his big, or from like your eyes, or maybe even the feedback like that you're getting has been the biggest?
Yeah,
changes?
I think it's all about strategy, and strategy encompasses the quality of the content that we're putting out, but then also the channels that we're pushing the message through and advertising. So I think it's just building out a holistic strategy of how all these things play in the same sandbox together and feed off each other. But before that, I was, we did some things well. We did digital advertising well. Our social media was really engaging, but there wasn't a concerted strategy that all those things fed off each other. And so you might do really well on one, but then others fall a little bit short. And I think just combining all those things into a single strategy really helped move the needle for us.
Talk about that. I mean, you have even coming through your own, and this can even, it starts going into family stuff, right? But like Emily, your wife, talk about how you guys have come through some of those issues where you're like either struggling with too much time at work, or she's helping you solve some of those problems, right? Like how critical has she been, and how have you guys been able to manage through those?
No, she's been instrumental, and you watch that video of our reaction at the Super Bowl party.
That's awesome.
And like every time I watch it, I get emotional just because I see her crying. And I realized for 14 years, like she put her passions on hold to help me pursue mine. And then, so she answered every phone call, every email initially with a crying baby with colic and reflux. Like I didn't envy what she was going through at the time, but she's been my rock since day one on this.
Yeah.
And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, my top sales guy drove into town, kind of mysterious, and then put in his notice. And I was like, wow. And it was that initial lull where everything shut down. People were still trying to figure out what do my next steps look like? Do I have a job? Like, do I got to stay in the house all the time? And so he put in this notice, and I was just in a pinch, and I was like, Em, I need you to like step up. Can you do sales for me for just, a couple of years? Like just something to where we can hold these accounts and weather the storm. And then everyone got tired of being cooped up, right? Mm-hmm. And so business just, it hockey sticked, and it just went nuts. Like anything we could produce, we could sell. And we try to keep several, thousands of hard coolers on hand at any given time. There was one holiday season where I had 5 coolers that weren't allocated in the back. And they were all on one pallet too, And so seeing her step up and help drive that, and like all the positive feedback I get from people that call and they're like, is Emily there? I'm like, oh, she works remote, and I'll give you her cell phone number. And they're like, I got to tell you, she is fantastic to work with. And I'm like, they don't know that she's my wife, but getting that amount of feedback has been great. So she's been really selfless through this entire process. And now she's, rolled up her sleeves and jumped in, still does sales for us. But I think everybody's got to have a rock like that. You've got to have a spouse. And I was fortunate to have a father who's in business with me who knew how to run a successful business. Yeah. And without that, I wouldn't be where I am. I had some of the skills that I'd built in my previous corporate career, but that only gets you through the X's and O's portion of it. It doesn't help with the psyche part of it, of having bad days or losing accounts and getting a lawsuit that is unexpected. You've got to have that as well, and be able to lean on people to help you power through and kind of pick you up when you get down.
That's awesome. That's huge. I mean, that makes me think of times where it's because I can relate, and I know so many of our people listening can relate to this too, but you wake up to that 6 a.m. email, and you're like, the whole sinking feeling comes down over the day. And you share the story with your wife or your spouse, and they immediately know, because they have a degree of it, or I'll feel the whole thing too, but they feel it from you. Right. And so they snap into action, and they take care of the house, or they take care of the business, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They take more of the load so you can take care of business on that end and try to squash it or fix it or whatever you got to do.
And she's been great in that aspect. I mean, our kid plays club volleyball, travel tournaments. We do 10 tournaments a season, practice 3 days a week and private lessons and everything. And she's just like, I'll handle that aspect of it. Don't rush home from work. I'll take her to practice. I'll take her to her lessons, and just you stay focused. But like, I don't get the phone calls of, why are you still at work? Can you come home? And that's how I know, like we have a great relationship is, I don't have to tell her those things. I don't have to justify it. Like, she understands, and she just compliments my skill set. And when I get low, she pulls me up, and then when she gets low, I pull her up. But that's really what it boils down to, is just having a partner to help fight through these things. And the last few years, we've gotten really good of, like, for a while, like, we'd go out to dinner with the kiddo, and my kiddo would be like, can we not talk about Bison tonight? And so we've gotten really good about flipping that switch. Okay, like we're not talking about work tonight. Let's just unwind as a family, spend some quality time together. And we don't have to say that. It just kind of comes organically now, which has been great because it took years for us to figure that out.
Yeah. No, that's so awesome. And how old are your kids again?
I've got one kid and she's 13.
Okay.
So 13-year-old girl in middle school. It's like, this is the part that I dreaded. I was like, oh, I'm going to tag you in the teen years, but it's been fantastic. So just the one kid. And it's kind of weird to think about, like, here I am 41 years old and now I'm kind of on the tail end of this. And I'm like, if we're going to be empty nesters in 5 years, because our entire lives have been built around raising this child and preparing them for the real world and then building this business and make sure she has the opportunities to be successful in life. And then now I'm like, wow, we're almost at that point where all of our work gets tested as this kid, flies the coop and leaves. I'm like, it's just kind of, it's starting to settle in as I have more friends that are going through that, sending their kids off to college and everything. I'm like, it goes by quick. 13 years flew by. Another 5 is going to be just as quick, if not quicker at this age. So,
dude, it like breaks my heart. I had those times. I think it was when Grace, we got a 10, 5, and a 1-year-old right now. And at 42, right? And Grace, our 10-year-old, I think about that. When she turned 10, I'm like, she's going to be out of the house in 8 years. And I immediately start melting a little bit, like it hurts. And I get like Megan will bring in the Cody Johnson song. There was I can't remember the name of it, but he brings in like his girl song. And I'm like, don't do that to me. Why would you do that to me? Don't make me just all cry right now. And so I can feel it, right? Like I feel that. And then of course you feel that she's preteen right now, but you feel some of the attitude, even some coming on.
Yeah. And for me, it's been one of those things where it's forced me to appreciate all the moments. And like, waking up for a tournament or having to travel we went to New Orleans and St. Louis this month, back-to-back weekends. And like you go through those moments and it's like the 5:30 a.m. wake ups to get on the court at a convention center by 7 a.m., and like it's exhausting, but it's forced me. Like I had a realization about a year ago, like I'm going to miss these moments at some point in time.
Yeah.
So it's critical that I make the most of them. And so I've just been looking at life through a different lens and just maximizing those moments. And, from time to time, there's other things I'd rather be doing, but like I just turn that off and I'm like, no, you're going to miss this in 5 years. So soak it up, make the most of it. And it's kind of changed my outlook on everything, but I'm loving life. Even the teen years, I was really worried about them. But I'm like, this has been fun, and it's been cool to see her flourish in middle school. Yeah, I struggled with middle school. Like I felt out of place, like I didn't belong.
Were you the fat kid like me?
No, I wasn't the fat kid. I was the skinny kid that had no fat on him. That's like undersized and just rail thin.
Yeah.
And but it's been so cool because I worried about middle school, but it's been so cool to see her just hit her stride and come into her own. And I'm like, I look back and. 2 proud parents that not only did we make her, but we helped build her into the person she is now, and she turned out awesome. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, very rewarding.
Heck yeah. No, I love that stuff. That's okay. Now, talk a little bit about that, right? This is actually this is on the docket for one of our next kind of talk episodes is raising kids that aren't spoiled. Basically, right? And so it's so easy. Like we had our storm the other day and the trampoline blew over and got destroyed basically and no good. And Grace is like, can we get another one? And I'm like, do you want to save the money for it? And do you want to pay for it? Because I don't really care to have it right now.
Yeah.
And she immediately deflates off it. And that wasn't my goal. But talk like, is there any plan? Does she want to come in to the business, or do you want that? Is it part of your vision, or what? Or
I think it'd be awesome if she did.
Yeah.
And she's got an entrepreneurial passion. When she was 8 years old, she's like, I want to start my own business too. And I'm like, all right, what are you gonna do? She's like, I'm gonna dog sit. And I said, okay. I made her a little logo and engraved it on a tumbler for him, like Emma's dog sitting business,
That's awesome.
and she was so proud of it. The first summer she did it, she made like $2,000. at 8 years old. And I was like,
That's really good.
I was like, holy
cow.
smokes, she's going to think that all this stuff comes easy. But
My girl's going dog sitting. That's what she's doing.
yeah, I mean, it was great. Like these parents would drop off pets and like we're going on vacation, but it consumed like our entire summer. And it was like there was always pets there and everything. And we ended up getting one of our own, during the pandemic, like every other American, it felt like, that had never had a pet before. But my wife is always like, we only have one, so let's spoil her. Let's spoil her. And I'm like, you can do that to a fault. And I had a great example. We went to New Orleans, and it's like a pay to play tournament, right? Mm-hmm. And they pick the hotel for you, and you have to stay there in order to play in the tournament. And so the hotel they had picked out was right across from the police station, the jail, and a homeless camp. And so we walk into this hotel, and we don't travel all that often as a family. When we do, we like to stay at nice places. And so I'm like putting on a front, and I see like one of my buddies over there on a laptop, and he's like looking at me, and he's like, we're not staying here. We're not staying here. And like traveling with 13-year-old girls, it makes you uncomfortable having the jail and the police station right there.
Yeah.
And you want the kids to be able to run around and play. And so we go up to the room, and I put on this front, and I'm like, look at the view. And I open it, and it's just like people laying everywhere and like all this stuff. And my daughter's like, Mom, did you bring flip-flops? And it was not a nice hotel. It would have been by far the worst hotel she's ever stayed at. And so we logged on and used points to book another hotel. And it was called the Roosevelt, which is a Waldorf Astoria hotel.
Oh, Waldorfs are nice.
And so we walk in there, and she looks around, and she's like, this is my kind of hotel. And I was like, all those times you complain about homework or studying or like school is dumb. And like, I was like, this is what you want to be able to do as an adult. And I didn't tell her I used points for it. She thought I just paid for it. So, in the end, it was more or less free to us. But it was a perfect learning example to show there's, you and your work ethic and the time you put into school or your career is going to dictate the amount of success you have. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with, that with people that their passion isn't business by any means, and they just want to be great parents and raise a great family and make ends meet. Like there are plenty of people out there that's how they operate, but I know that she's hungry and she wants more. And it was just a cool opportunity to go from like this rock bottom 1-star hotel to this 5-star experience and explain to her like, this is hard work right here. To get to this level and stay at a place like this as an adult, it's going to take work. And so just being able to leverage that as a learning opportunity, I got a lot of value out of it. And then like we get home, and she's like, I really love that hotel. I want to be able to stay at hotels like that.
Me too.
I'm like, okay.
Me too, baby.
Yeah. It's time to grind. So no complaining about it. It'll pay dividends in the long term.
That's awesome. It's a lot of fun to be able to do that. I did that. I put it in a newsletter. Actually, I got a bunch of responses from it, but I just decided I wanted to be a little more intentional and about teaching my kids about money and just the respect of it, basically, because and I'm sure you've had your own experiences with this, but this was a good thing for me playing ball early. It helped me frame money in the right way for my business. Was playing in the league, you're a millionaire to everybody, right? Everybody's got money. It doesn't matter. So everybody's all got their hand out. And it was very, very much this dismissive nature of the work that went into producing it. And so it's about the only thing I don't like, or the biggest thing I don't like, is the disrespect of somebody's finances, right? And so like somebody who I always talk about this, somebody who walks into your house, there's two types of people. One walks into the house and says, this is amazing. Like, how did you build this? Tell me the story, right? This is what I love hearing from people. And then there's the second person that walks in and says, must be nice. Must be nice to have that. And you're like, get out of my house.
Yeah, you're like, no, it is nice, but it wasn't always nice. They didn't see the grind. Like when other people were out partying in high school and just, goofing off and not taking life seriously, you were in the weight room, you were studying, you were training. And I think so many people think, oh, he's just naturally gifted. Like you stumbled into that. You woke up one day and had a collegiate offer. Yeah. They don't see the amount of effort that you've put into that and the blood, sweat, and tears that you invested to get to that point.
Well, and that's what's so big, and that's what I love about it. And so, anyways, to help produce. But what I did with Grace, our 10-year-old, was we were just at Chewy's Mexican restaurant for lunch, and I was actually jacked because I was like, I'm on this diet, and I'm like, just give me the fajita meat and the vegetables. That's all I need. And it was a small bill, but it was only $60. And I wanted to show her too, so I showed her the bill, right? And I'm like, hey, would it be cool to eat out like this? Because she loves Chewy's, the ranch sauce, right? I go, would it be cool to eat out like every day like this? And she goes, oh, that'd be awesome. I go, do you know how much that would cost? And she goes, I don't know. And she took a stab at it, like some $100, right? I go, okay, what if we did this for a year straight? And so I just did the math, but it was a little over 22 grand, I think is what it was, 22 or 23,000 without any tip, just $60 a day to eat out like that. And she was like, whoa. And so it was cool because you just start seeing the wheel turn a little bit. And so I like it because the whole point is like, I want them to respect it. I hate just get rid of all the people that disrespect it, right? Because they don't know, they don't care to know, honestly, if they're having an attitude towards you that you were just gifted or born with a silver spoon. But if we can do that, I think that's a huge deal. We'll do this. I hate to wrap it up, but I want to do this. Give me, what would you tell you young family, just starting the business over again? Where's the first places you would go to get this thing up going as fast as you could?
I think, I think it's just encouraging people to take the plunge. I think too many people just have ideas like, I got a business idea, and they never do it. They never get off high center.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to quit your full-time job and go pursue something. I didn't for the first 5 years of the business. I worked full-time in Dallas for Southwest Airlines. But I took that plunge and I said, I'm going to put 50 hours into my Southwest career. And then I was putting 30 plus hours into Bison. But I just had to tell myself, take that plunge, like take that step, put yourself out there, because the last thing you want to do is be 70 or 80 years old looking back and being like, what could have been? How would my life have been different had I not attempted that?
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. The second would be, I'm a firm believer that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Yeah. Surround yourself with passionate people that provide not just value, like you're taking advantage of them, but make you a better person. And I think when you do those two things, you take the plunge and then you surround yourself with mentors and successful people that have navigated, those roads before. I think you're setting yourself up for a lot more success than trying to just figure everything out on your own. Because sometimes just asking people and, hey, do you have time for a lunch or a cocktail? Like the lessons you get out of that and the findings you get will pay dividends down the road. But you got to put yourself out there. You got to take the risk and commit to doing something, and then find the right people to help you build that success. And they don't have to be business partners. They can just be somebody you buy lunch from that you respect, and they teach you, the inner workings of how to build a successful business. But you got to take the plunge and put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's huge. Same thing for your marriage and your family. What's the biggest lesson you would tell a young guy, right, or young entrepreneur, or somebody maybe did take the plunge, and they have a young family, they're married, looking to have kids, maybe they have kids right now, to make sure that they don't lose their family?
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, family's always got to be number one. Yeah. We tend to, in America, like if you look at where we rank as happiest countries, we're like in the teens now, right? People put jobs and success ahead of everything else. And I think, what that typically leads to is a really rough marriage and poor parenting. I think the value, family's always got to be number one. Make them a priority. And then secondarily, you focus on the business. And when you do that, I think you've got that proper support system at home that's going to help you weather the storm whenever business isn't clicking on all cylinders and you're facing these headwinds. Having that support system at home, but you got to put family first. You've got to allocate sufficient time to it, because when you're 70 or 80, you won't look back and say, I wish I would have worked harder. Yeah. You'll say, I wish I would have spent more time with my family and done this trip and really, built that time together to really establish a close bond, that's what you're going to look back on and 40 years and say, that was the best investment I made. And I think too many times people tend to reverse those. And that's really the American culture now. And I think it's a sad moment. And I think we're starting to see the impacts of that.
I think it's true. And I'll tell you selfishly, and I love this, the monologue Jerry Jones did in Landman. You saw that, right? That went viral, which I hope it caught a lot of people's attention because, and for anybody that hasn't seen it, he basically was sharing with this big oil and gas billionaire the whole reason he bought the Cowboys was a selfish reason, was for him to spend time with his family. And so they were involved in and this is the truth. There's a monologue in the show, but it was the truth. But that they are involved in all aspects of the Cowboys and in his oil and gas and real estate development. And I've seen this firsthand. Like I go back, I played, this is like almost 15 years ago now, right? But I go back and they'll bring me in to talk to rookies and stuff about like my journey in business and success past football, basically. But I've seen kids from the Jones family who, when I was in the locker room, were babies running around the locker room who are in it, working in the business now. And anyways, I think it's the coolest thing. And just like hearing you talking about how your family's involved in the business, because in that monologue, he's speaking to this billionaire in a hospital bed who's facing death potentially, or basically. And he's saying, he's like, you're going to be sitting in a bed like this when you're about to die. And you're going to be surrounded by your family. I just hope that family is the group that you chose to spend your time with. And it's just what you're talking about. It's like, is that time people you care about? Doesn't have to be blood necessarily, but right, the most important people in your life. And so that's big. That's a big dream of mine. And Grace even laughs because I'm like, what do you want to do? She goes, I want to be the boss of Pro Capital. And I'm like, all right, cool. Well, you got to learn some things and get that respect and stuff. But I think it's so cool is I so badly, and I appreciate that about you hearing that story about you and Emily, because everybody's going to look at that. Right. And it's like, I remember guys before we had kids who were massive impacts on me, and just seeing how they treated their family and their wife and their kids and how that was like, man, that's the kind of husband or dad that I wanted to be. Yeah.
And I mean, like I look back on it and there are so many opportunities from like parenting perspective that I fell short, no one's perfect. We all make mistakes, but just viewing those as a learning opportunity to become a better father, a better man. To me, that's the journey of life right there, is how can I be a better person at the end of this day than I was this morning when I got out of bed? And I think when you approach life from that lens, from a parenting perspective, it gives you more patience and it gives you a little bit more will and desire to really make a difference in their lives. But it's crazy to think, like, as men, we rarely ever feel like we're mature. And we get past high school and then it stalls out from there. And it's like now I'm responsible for, a family and a mortgage and a business and you get overwhelmed by it. But at the end of the day, it's just be a little bit better tomorrow than you were today. That's the end goal. So
that's awesome. Dude, well, listen, I appreciate it. This has been great. And I know everybody's going to get a lot out of it. I know I have, but man, thank you so much for coming on.
I certainly appreciate the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun.
Heck yeah.